Hello, everyone. Welcome to the
Hello.
10th annual or 10th year of the Gary International Black Film Festival. Hello, Facebook world. Everybody's out there. If you can see me, I am Sydney Chatman. I'm one of the hosts and I'm also a committee member. I am so proud to be a part of this festival. It is in our hometown of Gary, Indiana. Woo woo! You got to say GI. You got to add the little parts to it. You got to get a little crunk with it when you say Gary, Indiana, GI. So I have some really fantastic people on this panel today. This panel is called "If You Build It, They Will Come." Ooh. If you build it, they will come. And what is this panel about? Well, I'm so glad you asked, friends. This panel is about um, how do we build film festivals around the country? How do we create Black film festivals? It is the heart of some communities around the country. How do we get film festivals in our cities? So we're going to talk to the people who are making this happen. Cool. So let me introduce my people. Okay, wait. I just want to make sure that I'm doing this correctly because this is live and I'm trying to make sure that I have all of my information. I have it all laid out in front of me. So I'm going to start with Andrea. Andrea, wave to the folks there so they can see you. Hello,
Good
hello.
afternoon, everybody, or hello, everybody.
Yes. So, Andrea, I'm going to give you a little bit of background about Andrea. She's a fantastic person. I read her bio and looked at some of your wonderful films online. But Andrea has been a creative her whole life, from writing and drawing as a child. She graduated to film and video making and composing and performing music. Andrea spent 10 years as creative director for the boutique video agency Art Park in Paris, where she focused on leading the creative process, which she does currently as video manager for Sound Transit. A graduate of NYU's Tisch School of the Arts with a double major in film and linguistics, she is director of the Seattle Black Film Festival. Her films have been selected for festivals from Dallas, Texas to Ankara, Turkey, and she has participated in the collective film project Film Fabric 3 times in France, Finland, and the Czech Republic. Since moving to Seattle 4 years ago, she has directed a winning short in the Seattle Times 3 minute masterpiece film competition, screened at the Northwest Film Forum, and won a first place ad reel wheel award for Sound Transit. Y'all, I'm all over the place because I'm so excited and I'm a little bit kind of like, bubbly because I'm trying to make sure that I say everything right and give everyone their props and kudos. So this is Andrea. Thank you so much for being here this afternoon, all the way
So
from Seattle.
happy to be here. Thank you.
Okay, and our next panelist is Moikgantsi, Moikgantsi Kgama. I want to make sure that I'm saying all of this correctly, y'all. So bear with me. Moikgantsi Kgama is the founder and executive director. She is an audience development specialist with a reputation for excellence in her field. Her credits include I Will Follow, Academy Award nominated Trouble the Water, Killer Sheep, and Lumumba, to name a few. She is also the founder of ImageNation Cinema Foundation, a Harlem based nonprofit media arts organization. ImageNation presents progressive media by and for Black people of color with the goal of establishing a chain of art house cinemas dedicated to these works. Through a variety of establishing a, through a variety of public exhibitions and programs, Image Nation fosters media equity, media literacy, solidarity, cross cultural exchange, and highlights the humanity of Pan African people worldwide. So, Moikgantsi was also named 25 Women Who Are Shaping the World by Essence Magazine, received the Trailblazer Award from Real Sisters Film Festival, and a proclamation from the city of New York for her work with Image Nation. All right, y'all. We have so many wonderful people here. She lives in Harlem, in the Harlem community, with her husband and her son. Thank you, Moikgantsi, for being here with us today.
Thank you.
And finally, we have Troy Pryor. Troy Pryor. Let me make sure I have all of my information on hands. Um, Lord help me. I tell you all, it's like when I have everything ready, and then all of a sudden it's just like, okay, where did it go? So you know how it is with technology, right? We know that sometimes things happen. So here I am. It's mistakes happen, but I'm gonna pick it back up. And Troy is an American producer, actor, and public speaker. His stage, on camera, and voiceover work has led to award winning content, including collaboration with ABC, HGTV, Warner Brothers Entertainment, DIY Network, TV One, and Inspire TV. A Chicago native, Troy is an advocate for connecting local, undiscovered, diverse talent to mainstream content and media platforms through the production network, Creative Cypher. His collaborations with Oscar and Grammy winning artists and their foundations, including Che Rhinefest Smith, Kanye West Donda House of Organization, and Common's Common Ground Foundation. These partnerships have enabled Troy to mentor hundreds of up and coming artists and empower production deals that build Chicago's artistic community. As a Chicago scholar, he's 35 under 30, Black Enterprise TCX Fellow, and Ad Color nominated Innovator of the Year. Pryor has a tenacity for innovation and big picture strategy thinking, and he's a former collegiate athlete. Troy was a record breaking powerlifter and linebacker for the University of Illinois. He is the youngest person ever to be elected to Chicago's Screen Actors Guild and American Federation of Television and Radio Artists. So, oh, board of directors, yes. So, I can go on and on about all of these wonderful people, and we'll make sure that you can find all of their information after our talk today. But I just want to let's get started. Let's get into it. Let's talk about filmmaking and how we create powerful film festivals around the country. So let's start with just a simple question. What brings you joy? And I'll give it over to Troy. I'll start with.
What brings me joy is being able to have an impact. And, in order to have an impact, we have to first be good listeners, good observers, see what the need is. And, being able to take a step back and applying whatever resources or skill sets that we have available to us to have an impact. It's amazing to do things and get the accolades. But when somebody comes up to you and they say, I never would have done this if I didn't come to your event, or I would have never connected with this person if I didn't come to this, that means the most to me.
Moikgantsi, how about you? What brings you joy?
I would say what brings me joy, what kind of drives my work, is the ability to see my visions come to fruition. Whether that be through creating community, having, maybe several thousand people in a park enjoying an event, whether that be creating a new website, whether that be being able to support filmmakers in their endeavors. But having a vision and actually realizing that is what brings me joy.
And Andrea.
I'm going to have to go with seeing content with our beautiful Black people front and center, and watching the evolution of that over the past few years and even decade, of the breadth and depth of stories where we see our people just radiating on the screen, and the spaces that places like film festivals create for audiences to see themselves just celebrated on the screen in increasingly diverse ways and true ways is definitely something that's bringing me joy right now.
Awesome. So the title of this discussion is "If You Build It, They Will Come: Building Legacy and Community Through Black Film Festivals." And the description is this: the power of the media has the ability to shift perceptions, reminds us of our humanity, and make us whole. We belong here. Our visibility in films matter. When we are the creators of our own stories, we uplift our communities and remind them that our existence has power. So I wanted to first start off with, in terms of your ideas of why would you even get involved in this idea of media in the first place? Why media? Why film? Why community? Why those things? Media, film, community. Why? That's a powerful medium, right? Why did you decide to step into this medium?
I can maybe speak on behalf of everyone that at a certain point, it's not a decision. With every creation, you're kind of pulled towards a calling. And when there are spaces where you can express yourself and show your work, it completes the circle of the triad you were talking about, community and media. That's definitely that just the potential for the works to bring us together, I think is pretty powerful.
Anyone else want to share?
I would say for me, it's been kind of a lifelong journey and a lifelong calling. You know, I said bringing my ideas to fruition was what gives me joy, but also creating community and contributing to community is what gives me joy. So at a really young age, I started to look at the power of media. And when I say young, I mean like 3. At a really young age, I was kind of introduced to what it meant to see myself in public spaces, in the media, in you know, in books, in print. And I realized when I'll tell you a quick story. When I was a little kid, I drew a picture of a white family. I think I was about 3. And my dad challenged me. He said, "What are you doing drawing that? That father looks nothing like me. Who is this guy?" And at that young age, I stopped and said, "Well, why did I draw that?" And that's when I realized I drew it because, in spite of the fact that I was being raised in this really, you know, this is, I'm going to age myself, the 70s. So, you know, I was in a very, you know, a Black empowered environment. I still was ingesting media that negated me. And that's when I realized that, you know, when I looked at TV, I needed to see myself. And when I looked in movies, in magazines, I needed to see myself, and that my friends needed it too. Also, being Pan-African, having an African American mother and a South African father, and hearing the conflicting stories we would tell about ourselves to ourselves, I realized we really needed to use the media to reintroduce ourselves to what it meant to be part of this Black world community. And so that has kind of what's always driven me, and understanding the power of media to do that. You know, being introduced to Marcus Garvey and the work that he did through the UNIA and the Negro World, his publication, to unite people throughout the diaspora, I think is a power that's specific to media. And so, you know, once you get a little taste of that power, you are drawn to it, and you're drawn to the ability to create community, to strengthen community, and to affirm yourself.
Yeah,
That's
and
it.
for me, I was groomed by a whole family of ministers, so I came into it through a different, through a different means. I was used to seeing community leaders, community organizers, people leading teams, people leading infrastructures, and once I was done playing sports, I got into media through being a talent. And so after you're on a couple of sets, you read a few scripts, and then you start to you start to question the things. You're wondering why this script is written like this. Why is this character like this? And you start to look at who's in charge, who owns what studio, where the decisions actually being made. And you combine that with this childhood of seeing community leaders. Eventually I knew that for me, my path in media had to be in a similar role as the mentor that I had, but in this entertainment space. And naturally, it pushed me in a space, it compelled me, it pulled me into a space where it was not just about creating a project, it was about what are the stories that are being told and the portrayals, and how are we communicating to the world who we are, how are we interpreting the messages, how are we receiving the messages, and then eventually you start to get into the nuances of the business itself to see where the power lies. And so those are the things that got me into media, but it still stems from seeing ministers or people that could lead a group of people in one way, shape, or form.
You know, it's interesting. We all know that historically film has been is seeped in racism. So the fact that you all have carved spaces in your own cities to create a different version of what we see in Hollywood is really powerful. Why did you decide to stay in the cities that you're in? Why are you in New York? Why Chicago? Why Seattle? Why those places? We'll start with Andrea.
I'm relatively new to Seattle, so I've only been here about 6 years. And as you read earlier in my bio, I spent quite a bit of time overseas. And I was drawn to Seattle for a number of reasons. And notably, one of them was not the Black community, because it is definitely, it's kind of small, but very mighty. But it was only until I arrived that, even coming back from overseas and having a very different experience vis-a-vis my identity and how I was perceived by other people, that landing in Seattle, definitely there's a strong arts community, and that is definitely what's made me stay, and realizing the opportunity for so much. There's just so much Black talent here and Black brilliance, that there's just a huge opportunity for to elevate that, and that's definitely something that I do, and I take, passion in doing with our festival, and creating that connectivity between the abundance of creativity and talent that we have in the Black community in Seattle, and connecting that with the diaspora and bringing the diaspora to Black communities here. So just connectivity, and seeing that window of the wealth that can overlap and intertwine.
Moikgantsi, can you share why Harlem? Why New York?
I mean, New York is an arts community. It's one of the most vibrant arts communities in the world. So, and the independent film here community here is really strong. So, I mean, I was always drawn to New York, even when I was, in Syracuse, where I grew up. I wanted to be in the big city. I wanted to be a part of this arts community and part of this activist community. So it's always been a magnet for me. But once I got here and started to do my work, I built a pretty strong supportive community around me. And, I started to make relationships and create the foundation I needed in order to build on some of my goals. So, I've been here for a long time doing this work. It's a media capital of the world. So to be in this business, I think there probably for a long time was no better place to be. But I actually don't plan to be here a whole lot longer. So I would love to move. And I think now that we're moving into the world where a lot of the communities we're creating through cinema are online, I think we can kind of do this work anywhere we want.
Yeah.
But for a long time, New York City has made a lot of sense, and it's been very good to me. So,
No, so Troy, I heard Moikgantsi say that New York is the capital of media, and I'm sure that you probably have some concerns about that comment, being from Chicago.
It's all good. It's all good. You look back. It's so interesting. You look back on a lot of heavy hitters in the industry, and you look at their backgrounds, and they're from Chicago, but they moved. So Chicago has a lot of heavyweights. But
Frankie Knuckles is actually from New York. I just want to point that out.
Yes.
It's all good. It's all love. But you know what? She brings up an amazing point, and that is the internet has democratized the industry to where you can be anywhere and do a considerable amount of work. And unfortunately, the pandemic has shined a light on a lot of that. So a lot of creators, you're already innovative thinkers outside the box, if there's a box at all, figuring out a way to keep things going. It has shown you that when we're on the other side of this, how many meetings are you actually going to go to, or will you question the need to go to every meeting in person? Will you question the need to meet, to go to every event? We want that interaction. That'll never go away. We want that human interaction. But it has shown us that with everything moving in a digital space, it's an amazing tool and resource to have, so we can be anywhere and do a considerable amount of our work. Chicago, for me, is, I was raised between Chicago and Atlanta, so those are really my homes. Marietta, Georgia, and Chicago. And so when I was done playing ball, for me, I signed with an agency. And so I got ingrained into the talent community first, working on the shows, commercials, and all of that. And one question I always got was, if you're going to take this seriously, when are you going to move to LA? Now, for me, a dude that was, for unfortunate injury, was in a wheelchair for a moment and then became a college athlete, to me, that sounded like a challenge. And so I saw opportunity in a space where there weren't a lot of us in executive roles, on certain boards. A lot of institutions needed to evolve for a variety of reasons. And this was right at the time when I started to memorize union contracts, and I was helping actors, or excuse me, creators flip their projects from non-union to union, and I found a void that I could fill, and it just continued to grow, and I became a go-to for a lot of Black and brown millennial creators. And so, of course, I could always go to the coast, but there was this gap that was right here, and in many ways, opportunities were just sort of pouring in because when they would look around, they didn't see anybody else that looked like them that could break down the contract or explain to them how to go about doing this. And then that just continued to grow into what is Creative Cypher today. But there was always this light bulb question of, do I stay here or do I go? But truth is, no matter where you go, it's going to be a grind. It's going to be a hustle. You're still going to have to build your brand no matter where you are. So you can't, it's never about just jumping up, going somewhere without having a game plan or without having something already in place. And I was taught to master your market first. So for me, it was always, if I do anything else, I'm going to make sure I'm set here. And then if I choose to go somewhere else, then it will make sense.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about why did you decide to go into media? Why did you decide to be in the film industry? But I'm curious to know a little bit more about your organizations individually. So Moikgantsi, can you tell us a little bit about ImageNation and the Soul Cinema Cafe?
Yeah. ImageNation was established almost 2 decades ago. And we started out as an organization. And when we started, there wasn't really anything else like us. I think now there are other organizations that are similar, but at the time, I was in New York City. I was in my 20s, and I was one of the only people I knew my age who was creating a space for Black people in independent film. I think Warrington Hudlin had an organization that had recently stopped functioning. And so I had the only social space where you could come and meet new up and coming filmmakers. Everyone from the industry would come to the events. I met a lot of people at HBO, at the different studios, because they all came to my show because it was the only thing. We were, and it wasn't even glamorous. We were in a bar in Soho that half of the room was a screen. We would show movies on that screen, and then we would have poets and performers, because the idea was to kind of cross promote between the performers who were more popular than the filmmakers at the time. And we started to, and we started to develop new audiences for independent film. And through that work, I met tons of filmmakers at all different levels. I've worked with college filmmakers. I've worked with Spike Lee, Ava DuVernay, Stanley Nelson. And we built a pretty strong community here. And so that work took me to South Africa to present films. It took me to the Civicus World Assembly in Glasgow. It helped me establish partnerships with Lincoln Center. I had a 7-year partnership with Lincoln Center, which is a major performing arts center in the world, and especially in New York City. We currently have a partnership with the Apollo Theater, where we do a quarterly series. We've come to Chicago and done programs. And so ImageNation has kind of taken us lots of places and introduced us to lots of people. We are one of the Affirm partners, which is Ava DuVernay's distribution vehicle. We're a founding partner in that. And so, I had a vision at a young age, and I was still trying to figure out, how do I get it done? The vision was always to have a chain of cinemas. But we started off throwing film parties, essentially, and building film community. We went into the parks, and we still to this day do outdoor film screenings in the parks, where thousands of people come out to see a film and listen to music. And so that is the foundation of who we are. This summer was pretty hard because, we had COVID and the Parks Department wouldn't give us a permit. And so we said, well, we still have to do what we do. And so we did drive-in movie screenings, which I think for folks in other parts of the country, that's not a big deal. But in Manhattan, that's pretty hard. But we managed to do it, and it was pretty awesome. And so the one thing that I always thought was missing, and the reason I even started ImageNation, was to create film houses, art house cinemas, where we could show our work. So we're not relying on art houses that really don't, most of the time, the owners of the art houses don't get our community, don't get our stories. I think they're more open now than they were when I started, but my vision was to create another aspect of the industry where we were owners and where we controlled, we actually controlled who came in the door. And that's still my vision. We have a space in Harlem that we're developing into the Soul Cinema Cafe. We were supposed to open in May, and you all know what happened. And so, we're still trying to figure out where we're going to go from here due to COVID. But one of the things that we've realized is that, the Soul Cinema Cafe can exist all over the world virtually. And so we're doing a lot of virtual work right now. And we're still continuing to work on opening our brick and mortar space. And that's us in a quick nutshell.
It's wonderful. I mean, I love this idea of art and, the different types of art genres coming together with film. I think that's brilliant. I love this idea of owning our own space. It's so important that we have our own space. I'm sure I'm going to talk about retail in a real estate in a minute after we kind of get everyone else's point of view, because I'm curious to know, just how challenging it is to be able to carve out space in New York because the rent is too damn high, So Troy, I want to hear from you and just telling us about, Creative Cypher and all of the wonderful things that you're doing with Creative Cypher.
Yeah, thanks. So when I started about 8 years ago, it was with about 30 filmmakers at a tech incubator in Chicago. Shout out Emil Cambry, who's another Chicagoan. I think he's in Brooklyn now. But we started meeting up with 30 filmmakers. We did it every other month, and it was, it was a networking event. That's pretty much all it was at that point, just getting together. And I was a part of a lot of those already. And I'm not a fan of reinventing the wheel. So quickly, I said, this has to evolve or it's just going to fade away like a lot of other things will. So, our thing was, if we're going to come together, let's make sure we're aware of what everyone brings to the table for the purposes of allocating the resources to complete a project. Started doing that. Then we said, well, let's use these opportunities to also highlight the things that we work on. We started doing that. Those events started to get a few fans that just wanted to come just because they wanted to be in the energy, not because they were filmmakers or artists. They just knew that we were curating dope events, dope spaces. And then that continued to grow. We outgrew that space, and Columbia College came on board and provided us their cinema row, and they continued to grow. And that event was called Cypher Live. And it was a culmination of several things. We had the red carpet event with live music and art, and there was a comedian that opened it up. And then there was that we screened projects and allowed the audience or the individuals to pitch. And then we have a speaker, and that was a lot. So from that, we started to break things up, and we created different divisions. And Creative Cypher grew from being a film-focused organization to being an artist organization with the majority of the energy focused on film and content. So it just continued to grow. And then a couple of years after that, some of the programming took on a life of its own, and they needed to become their own legal entities. So out of this entity, Creative Cypher, we were able to amass a huge network of resources that we just call our bank, that is now turning into a membership platform that soft launches next month and goes into beta. We were able to create platforms for comedians, Black Ensemble Theater. The whole idea was originally, how do we create a space for a different generation to come into the theater? And all of the things that we were doing brought that demographic, that millennial demographic, that turned into stand-up comedy show, that then became film, that turned into 4 one-hour specials. That grew into where, we have a musical act on that show, and then the music organization says, well, we want to partner with you to help host and throw our event. So Creative Cypher grew into this entity that had 5 divisions. Production. Because of the resources we were able to aggregate, we found ourselves in a position where we were able to facilitate production of content. We have a media division that focuses on the intellectual property itself to help sell and license content. We have a live event division as a result of the events that we would put on that were really just a means to an end. We had no desire to host events. It was just, how do you get folks to pay attention without creating an experience? Well, that worked really well for us. So we had to create a separate division for that. And then finally, we created a digital division that focused on partnering with streaming platforms and other tech services. So the 4 divisions that I just named were formerly all within our original not-for-profit function in some capacity, but that became a little too gray. So we had to pull all of those out, and that had to become its own legal entertainment company, a legal entity, a different entertainment company. And then that 5th division is now called Cypher Foundation. So affectionately, we call the ecosystem the Cypher, but the Cypher is actually a social enterprise comprised of a not-for-profit that does all of our community outreach, buys out the theater, does our mentoring events and our programming, our Film Accelerator program, which is going into its 2nd cycle that just launched. We're really excited about that, and eventually it's going to Atlanta and Dallas. And then the other side of that is the for-profit that focuses on media creation, live events, and digital. We're now acquiring stake in 2 streaming platforms, a marketing company and an event ticketing company. And our whole goal was to occupy all spaces. So we had to break those things down. And then eventually I got to a point where I said, okay, I can't wear all of these hats. You know, obviously I had to create a board for the not-for-profit, but then I started to partner with other organizations that became those wings that I just mentioned. So the Cypher has become this portfolio of companies and this network that we've been able to facilitate resources with. And our one motto out of all of that is eliminate the need for permission. And this was our way to do that, because if there was something that we wanted to do, we wanted to be in a position where all we had to do was go to our bank and we had access to it in one way, shape, or form.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm taking notes. So if you see me doing this, I got a pen. I'm not on my phone. I'm taking notes. Old school way, just so you know. I love how both of you said that you both are creating experiences. I think that is so important. And then like not asking for permission. You know, we started this industry. We did off our backs. Oscar Michaud and all of these other, you know, innovative filmmakers started it. And why not? Why aren't we keeping this movement going? So I think that's amazing. And it's so much, Troy. I just asked so many questions, but I want to get to Andrea first before we get into some deeper questions about more of your platforms. So tell us more about the Seattle Black Film Festival and all of the wonderful things you all are doing in Seattle.
Thank you, Sydney. And I want to start first by saying I really appreciate the community and the way everyone is talking about community. That has definitely been a core part of Seattle Black Film Festival's foundation and growth. We actually just went through a name change. So 2021 is our 19th year as a festival, and we spent 17 years as the Langston Hughes African American Film Festival. And Langston Hughes, there is a facility in Seattle called the Langston Hughes Performing Arts Institute, and the festival has always been grounded there in the Black community. It's a building, an actual facility in the historically Black part of Seattle that has always hosted programs for families and kids since the 1950s or so, as far as I know. So this facility has been associated since then with a place for Black empowerment, Black creativity, Black knowledge building, and Black community building. And so it was great for us to associate ourselves with that facility in the early days to build audience and also to just be grounded in our history and in our roots in Seattle. So the early days of the festival, we were 8 or 9 days long, and definitely audience building was one of our first tasks. We were in that community, but a community that was in the process of being displaced ever increasingly, starting in the 70s. And from that time forward, places and spaces for Black people in Seattle started to get pretty sparse. So when this festival started, it was definitely in an effort to recenter that community around that building and have another programmatic offering essentially for people who look like us and to display works for people who look like us. So the first 15 years ago or so of the festival were really about creating a space for Black storytelling for Black audiences. So we could feel safe and come together and congregate around Black creation. Over the past few years, we've definitely shifted our focus more toward creating a space for filmmakers to grow. So in that shift, still having a really strong audience focus, and in that, a very important part of our festival every year is having panel discussions where the audience can ask questions of the filmmakers, or in the in-person version, pull the filmmaker aside afterwards and you know, riff and learn from what that filmmaker is trying to express, and express gratitude for the stories that the filmmakers are putting out there, and really creating that audience filmmaker connectivity. So then, you know, moving into, as I described, the filmmaker community building, one thing that we've been able to do over the last few years, which has been really rewarding, is create networks for filmmakers. So we try and bring as many filmmakers as we can to the festival so they can get to know each other, exchange business cards, find a camera person for their next project, you know, a designer, set designer for their next project, and really piggyback off of each other's progress and each other's creativity to broaden the network of Black filmmakers in the country and abroad. One thing that we have always distinguished ourselves, we're a network festival and a community festival, not a market festival. It's never been a focus of our festival to connect filmmakers with a deal or something like that. We've really always focused on the networking and the community aspect of it, knowing that going into next year, we've recently picked up an education partner that's going to help deliver just a higher level of connectivity to the industry for our filmmakers. So that's a new area that we're really excited about. In changing the name, I do want to focus on that a bit. We felt it was really important to help potential filmmakers who would apply to our festival understand the inclusive nature of our festival. In calling it an African American film festival, we have always hosted a number of films from across the diaspora, but we wanted to make it really clear. We use Film Freeway as a platform for people to submit films, and we wanted to make it really clear that our festival doesn't focus only on the African American experience. While that is what has definitely supported our festival throughout its life, we definitely feel it really important to grow into a space of interconnectivity across the diaspora, and to really explore more deeply how all of our stories are intertwined, and how it's important to be aware of that and embrace that for us to keep Black creativity growing and moving forward and taking over the world.
I think I love everything that you're saying about safety. I think that is so important to why we create these spaces in the first place. You know, audience building, community, filmmaker centered. Again, it's about it feels like all of us just, it seems like we just did this on purpose. Like we just knew that you all were doing the exact same thing. And I think that synergy is so important to our communities. And every time we say these words, every time we connect in those types of ways, we're connecting our hearts in a way that we're all coming together off of one heartbeat. So I think it's so amazing that you all are doing such fantastic work in your respective cities and communities, and it's all connected. You know, I should be able to go to Seattle and feel the same energy that I feel in New York, that I feel in Chicago, right? So just going back a little bit to space and how you all are navigating carving out your own space in your cities. Moikgantsi, I would like to hear from you. I know I just kind of brought up the rent is so high in New York. It's like, it's hard. You know, the gentrification is happening everywhere, right? On top of the fact that rent costs so much, how are you able to find funding and space to do the work that you want to do?
You know, it's been a challenge. I think not being from here was probably the first challenge, right? You come and you have to establish roots and then figure it out. But I work at I have a day job. I work at HCCI, which is a community development corporation, rooted in the goal to empower the Black community. So I was able to get space through HCCI, but it's still commercial space, and, you know, we still have to pay for it. And so, you know, space is always an issue. And I think that if there's anything I would tell folks is make sure you can own the space. You know, we have a lease. And so I was actually on a panel with a bunch of owners of micro cinemas, is what, you know, micro cinema owners, micro cinema presenters. I was the only African-American, the only woman, and the only one who didn't own her space, you know, the only one who had a lease. So for me, you know, the biggest challenge is moving from that place of being a renter to being an owner, so that you have more autonomy and just more power in terms of what happens in an ever-changing market. But we've been able to do it. We've been able to find spaces over on an ongoing basis. We've been able to maintain the location we're in. I think because of the work that we've done over the years, because of the community relationships we've built, and because, contrary to what people like to say, the creative community actually bolsters the value of real estate. And so, when you're talking to realtors and approaching realtors, that's something that you kind of have to come in knowing that. You have to come in knowing your power a bit. And so, you asking me New York City and rent is too damn high. Of course the rent is too damn high. So it's kind of a hard question, but for me, this has been our mission. And so we decided that the first space we would lease, and every other space after that we'll own. And I think that really has to be the mindset, and if you can skip the leasing phase, power to you. I think that has to be the mindset for anyone who's trying to open a physical cinema or a physical space. And the other thing is, if you're starting small, like I did, I still am a small entity, then you have to really understand the power of community and collaboration. Being at the Apollo Theater is no small thing. Being at Lincoln Center is no small thing. Having partnerships with the city where you can get access to city land. Those are the types of things that you have to focus on, building your community presence and having strong community ties. And I think without that work and those relationships, you're not able to do it. You're not able to do it unless you have access to a lot of capital. But in lieu of capital, I've had relationships, and I've had a track record of work, and I have a community that says, we want this to happen. We want to be in these spaces. I've been able to talk to investors and raise money. I've been able to reach into my community and raise money. And, that's how we've done it. It's not something that's easy, but I think if you're mission driven, and once you get into a real estate space, you have to be dollar driven. Eventually it's something that we can do. And I'd like to encourage anyone else to do the same thing, to really start thinking about the importance of us owning property and owning spaces, and even digital spaces. Owning digital spaces is critical. What Troy's doing is really important. And, we're moving into that space as well. Of course, we're all leveraging Twitter, we're all leveraging Facebook and Instagram, but at the end of the day, we don't own those spaces either. So, for me, it's a matter of understanding the importance of community, leveraging your resources, and being vigilant about what the end goal is. And the end goal is empowerment through equity. For me, whether it's the equity in the media assets and the content, the equity in the real estate, or the equity in that community that you built. But to me, that's really what it's about.
Yes.
And that's what pushes me forward when it gets hard and COVID delays your opening.
Right. But it's going to be all the more sweeter.
Exactly.
Because everything and good things come to those who wait, of course, but
and
also work. We say it at the same time. We say it at the same time. So Troy, tell us about Chicago. Being in Chicago, we know that the city is shifting quickly in Chicago. It's becoming one of the hottest places to live because it has its natural resource, which is water. We also don't have a lot of hurricanes or problems with the weather other than the fact that it's cold. But tell us about with what you're doing with creative Cypher. I know you've used CineSpace for things. You've also have done exactly what Moikgantsi said, which is to use the community and use spaces in the community like Black Ensemble Theater. But what about your spaces? Are you looking to have spaces? Are you working on that? Is it going to be a creative Cypher space soon on the South Side?
We've thought about that in a variety of ways. I think for me, it's been more of a personal goal as far as the acquisition of property and land. As far as our business model goes, we have primarily gone digital, virtual with a lot of things. And a lot of our programming in its early phases, we were blessed to be in a position where a lot of these incubators were popping up in Chicago, and these older factories were refurbishing because they wanted to become workspace or open workspaces or community spaces. However, a lot of them were shells, and they didn't have a soul. They didn't have anything else in there. So we came in position, and we were able to curate events, curate programming, bring things to the table, bring people in. And as a result, within the matter of probably 2 or 3 years, we probably got access to whatever we wanted in that time, you know, whether it was large space, venue space, theater space. And so we, as a Cypher, it's never been a part of our business model to buy one of those spaces, because our programming has always been included in everything as it relates to that. So we've always had that access. And then especially as so many of the things began to move digital and virtual, we wanted to allocate whatever we were bringing in toward that type of programming, because we, in a sense, I think of it like Microsoft or Word, right? We wanted to create a program that everybody could use, opposed to a space where we might be pulling people away from someone else. And even though I had a call today with someone, and we were talking about just, there were certain redundancies that we would see in a particular market. Chicago is very, and has been said, it's one of the most segregated places in the country. You could be on one side of town and have no idea that somebody else is doing something just like you across town, or you may need access to resources and not know that they're available because the branding or marketing or the information is not being communicated. So with me personally sitting on these different boards, I was able to see those gaps, and I knew that the task at hand for what we wanted to do could only be accomplished if we focused on building a system or a tool, opposed to one particular place. And that's been our model. Our model is, how do we create a program or system that we can pick up, plug and play over here, that we can plug and play over here, that we can plug and play over here. We create these bridges, and then 5 years later, if we want to use this space, we got it. If we want to use this space, we got it. Now, that brings up a great point though, and that is that eventually you do want to get to a point where you do own the property, you do own those spaces, but that was not an initial part of our game plan. Our initial game plan was, how do we create something that either doesn't exist or connects the things that already do. And our thing is, we wanted to own the system opposed to some of the pieces within.
That's wonderful. Yes, own the system and then take over. you said, don't tell anybody.
Yeah, don't say that too loud. Get that out the door.
Yeah, so yeah, well, we on Facebook, so there we go. So let's talk a little bit about how you're doing things over in Seattle, Andrea.
Thanks. And I appreciate so much, Troy, your focus on gatekeeping and making the ownership piece, I think, is really important. Seattle Black Film Festival has been really fortunate to have this facility in the historically Black community in Seattle. But as I mentioned, a really big challenge for us is that the people aren't there anymore. It's historically Black, but the Black people live at least 15, 20 miles away. So one of our biggest challenges has been, how do we connect with those audiences? So just as we'd started a big effort over the past 2 years or so to do more outreach programming, to go back into the communities where Black people have now been displaced to. And then COVID happened as we were trying to explore that more deeply. And it was really a blessing in disguise for us. We had some of the biggest audience numbers for our festival this summer than we ever have. We were able to pivot and be relatively nimble and say, okay, we can't do the in-person, let's go fully online. Seattle is tech laden, so we had multiple startups and smart people developing online streaming platforms. So we basically had a solution, that fell into our laps that we were able to build upon to deliver our festival a few months late, but in July of 2020. And as I said, we really had overwhelming audience participation. And one of the things we learned from that is, moving forward, definitely we're going to look at a hybrid version and see how the in-person piece of it will creep back into the scope of what we're focusing on. But just in the ability for us to not be financially limited in terms of plane tickets and hotel rooms, all of our filmmakers could potentially join us for panel discussions and, you know, discussions like today. We're tuning in from across the country, and there is so much power in that, as that's been a focus of our festival, to really increase that connectivity across filmmakers. At the same time, I really can't discount the importance of having our facility, the nonprofit that's called Langston, Seattle, that produces the festival is housed in that facility. It gives us, along with a couple other Black cultural arts organizations. So already that brick and mortar building having its own working arts community inside creates so many opportunities for us to collaborate with other arts organizations, and it helps each of us be stronger, you know, linked with that building. So whatever happens virtually, people still know who we are and where we came from, if you will. So we're definitely going to continue to build programming throughout the year virtually to continue building audience. Since we don't have that brick and mortar challenge, we've got that, you know, in our toolkit. And really now it's how can we help people understand that what we're putting together, our content, is relevant for you and you and you, no matter where you are, and it can touch your life, it can impact your life. So you're missing out if you're not a part of what's going on with Seattle Black Film Festival. That's really what we're trying to build upon right now.
You know, that brings me to my next question. So how do you keep people focused? There's so much out here. There's so many platforms that you can join. You can watch a movie at a fingertip. You can watch, you get a membership to Netflix and in Amazon and the others. How do you keep them engaged aside from the relationships? Because we've already talked about how we've built very strong relationships within our community. But you know, sometimes people kind of get fatigued at times, like I don't want to watch this, or I'm done for today. How do you keep people coming back? How do you keep them engaged? How do you and this is for everyone or anyone who would like to respond, but as you were saying that, I just wanted to kind of follow up with that question.
I can definitely hop on that for starters. As I mentioned a bit before, one of the really crucial parts of our festival is creating that connectivity between filmmaker and community. So more often than not, when we are screening a film at our festival, there is some kind of thematic tie-in that will have a community member present for the panel discussion after, to frame the conversation with either other community members or the filmmakers that produce the films. And the conversations that issue from these interactions are so precious and really not, you can't create them in another space because of that safety that we spoke about, and because of that kind of community of reflection of seeing yourself on the screen and seeing people and issues that you're interested in put in, you know, in front of you and out there expressing themselves. We really like to consider our model as offering something more than just you turn on Netflix, you watch a movie, and then you go eat dinner and you think about something else. We really try and create something that will make you think outside of the screen or beyond the screen, and really search for, what does this film mean to me? What does it mean to my family? What does it mean to my community? And to create a platform for dialogue around that. So the art, it doesn't just have space to resonate, but there are conversations around that art and those creations and those stories that are helping it hit home even more deeply, and helping build a larger community conversation and countrywide or global conversation around some of the issues that are coming up in the stories that we're telling. So that community connection is really key for us in making or delivering a unique experience to our audiences that's above and beyond just watching some content.
So I want to move on unless anyone else wants to answer the question. I wanted to talk a little bit about the social justice aspect. So we're all talking about COVID. We're all talking about what's currently happening. We have a racial pandemic and a health pandemic that's happening simultaneously in our lives right now. How much of this has shifted your mission and your vision for what you're doing, or enhanced your vision or your mission? Anybody?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I'll say it hasn't shifted my mission at all, not one bit. I think if anything, what's been happening in the world kind of almost affirms and fortifies what we're doing. It says, you know, because we've been doing this work for the same reason for for as long as I've been doing the work. The reasons haven't changed. What I think has changed is a public consciousness, and people are starting to really understand the importance of the work. So if anything, it's created more opportunities. And oddly, COVID has created a lot of opportunities in a lot of spaces, actually. Yeah, I would say if anything, it's fortified. It's really made people appreciate the work that we're doing. You know, I've been doing this for a long time, and I've gone through phases where I've had, you know, especially when you're trying to raise money, you have people say, well, you sure you want to be Black? You know, you sure you want to have that focus? And so I don't have to explain that anymore, which is great. You know, and if you were looking for foundation funding, you can now go back to the foundations because their focus shifts, you know, and now the focus is back on us. So I would say, if anything, it's an opportunity. And, you know, it hasn't done anything to deter me in any way or to sway my mission in any way. And if anything, it should also be growing our audiences. There's a young lady who owns the company Quality TV, and I've been seeing her get a lot more visibility in the media because of what's happening. And I'm happy to see that. I'm happy to see that now we're appreciated, and hopefully we'll be able to monetize more.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? Troy?
Sure. I couldn't have said it any better. It just reinforces a lot of the things that we were already doing, whether it is from a socially conscious standpoint or just from a technology standpoint. I can't tell you how many organizations and meetings that I've been a part of where where I have suggested certain moves, and now a lot of those organizations are in a position where they have to do those things, and they're playing catch up. And you know, I've gotten a lot of calls to join councils and boards and think tanks and all of this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, you know, we should have been doing this stuff a long time ago. It should not have taken for that to happen. So it just reinforces a lot of the things that we were already doing. And we were already in some of those spaces. And it has, in fact, opened up a few opportunities for sure.
So we're coming close to the end of our conversation, and we could go on. You all have shared so much really, really deep conversations. I think going back to this description, when I said that you all are curators of love and you're festival agents of change. I think that is so important. And listening to your conversation and your journey to where you are just proves that. It just proves it. I'm curious about things that you've learned. Like, what is one thing that you've learned in creating the works that you're all are creating, in the spaces that you are creating, that can give someone else who is considering starting their own festival in their own town? Can you give them some insight on that? Like, what are something that you've learned, something that you will say, I'll never do that again, or yes, do more of that? Yeah, so anybody can take that if you like to share. Do I have to call on someone like school? Do I have to have somebody raise their hand?
All right, I'll jump in. I'll jump in.
I twisted your arm.
Yeah, you know, it's something because so many of us have a passion for what we're doing, and there is a purpose behind it beyond just the business of show. And sometimes when we're really focused on that, we say yes to a lot of things because we want to fix everything. And that can become a challenge, and it can become a liability. So I will say, if you are embarking on the journey to create any type of transformative opportunity, to be kind to yourself, to understand that you are a human being. You do need some type of rest to regenerate, but you also need to surround yourself with the right team and the right people, because you can't do it all by yourself. And it's much better to come in with that understanding in order to manage expectations, instead of getting to a point where you're like, all right, I'm losing my mind. We're doing too much. We either have to cut this off or bring other people in. That was my experience. So I will say no right off the top. Be kind to yourself. Set your game plan, but know that a significant part of your game plan has to be being a great talent scout, because you need to have the right people on your team.
Yeah, I kind of echo what Troy said. I would probably be less eloquent and just say, get the money. You really have to focus on the business aspect of what we're doing, because I don't think anyone here on this panel was drawn to it because of the business aspect. We're drawn to it for so many other reasons. So those other passions are always going to be there, but you have to become passionate about the money side of it. If you want to sustain the business, if you want to grow the business, if you want to sustain yourself and your family. So, I think Troy and I are pretty much saying the same thing, but you really do have to focus on that. You have to create your plan and then work that plan, and try not to get distracted, and get as much support as you can get at the beginning, so that you lay a foundation that can support your growth in a really healthy way. I've been doing this for a long time, and I have gone to the point where I was like, what am I doing? And I keep coming back to it because of the passion. But at this point in my life, I realized that had I been more focused on the business side of it from the beginning, it would have been an easier road.
Yeah, I don't have a and money. I don't have a whole lot to add to that, because there's just so much wisdom in that. Really focusing on the sustainability. We have amazing ideas, and it's easy to get excited and to start to spread in all different directions, as Troy, you described. Decide what your one thing is, and that may shift and evolve over time. But is it about networking? Is it about community? Is it about a brick and mortar? Decide what your thing is. Stay focused. Do not be shy to ask any and every person you cross on the street for support, for a connection, for a contact. That's the way it works, and it's going to help you be more successful and build your courage and doing your elevator pitch and all that. And once you've decided what your thing is, make a plan to make it sustainable. Do everyone a favor, because more likely than not, you've got a great idea. And so if you're going to bring it to the world, bring it in a way that we can still have it in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. Set yourself up for success, and put some thought into what that really looks like in terms of the business aspect, as both of you were talking about. So, yeah.
This has all been so wonderful. And I have kind of a question on the spot, and I'm always considering where do women fit in all of in our world, and how Black women are beautiful, brilliant, smart, all of those wonderful things. So I wanted to know if you can all just give at least one or two names of someone that you would like to amplify and uplift in this conversation, whether they are a festival programmer like you all are, or someone in the industry. Just a woman's name, someone that or a young person's name, because I'm always curious about how we can bring the next generation into the work that we're doing. So any names, any women that you like to amplify and uplift, any festivals that you would like to share, and just sort of tell us to go find and look for before we go.
The Real Sisters of the Diaspora Film Festival is taking place right now. I believe it's one of the few festivals for Black women that's Oscar qualifying. It takes place, I think, right now through November 17th. So it's run by assistant in Carolyn Butts, who has been steadfast and who's a great community supporter. So I want to uplift Carolyn Butts, her name, and the work that she's doing. And I want to just say the Apollo has an incredible team of women who are really doing a lot of amazing work right now, and the new directions are really inspiring. So I want to encourage people to check out the Apollo. Can I also tell them to check out my show at the Apollo? I'm gonna tell you to do that too. Of course,
yes. That was the second to last question. Yeah.
Well, then I'll stay. We'll come back to it. So let's say Carolyn Butts and just the whole Apollo Theater team.
Thanks. I'll add to that. I've been getting a lot of inspiration from podcasts this year, some older ones and some newer ones. So definitely that adds a whole lot of perspective on what's going on in the rest of the world of creatives. So one that I'll throw out is Brokish. Please check out Brokish. As we were talking about the importance of the business side of what we're trying to build, and how it's just critical in building anything, definitely check out that podcast. It does a lot to definitely liberate me from so many white supremacist notions of money and what it means to acquire wealth. And that is in a key part of the creative field that you can't ignore, and liberating yourself from a lot of notions that I think box us in sometimes, and when we're trying to start new things and become gatekeepers for ourselves. So that's definitely one. And just a lot of writers right now, content creators. Shannon Johnson is one name that comes to mind. Just exploring the wonderful wealth of Black female storytellers and creators. I'll throw out one just content named Jezebel. If you haven't seen it, check it out. I think we're female creators as writers and storytellers are so under celebrated, because basically the notoriety of Black creators is built in some ways on the shoulders of Black male creators, definitely through the 80s and 90s. And Black female creators are really just starting to get the spotlight in a non-token way. So do what you can by checking out a lot of the female storytellers and writers as well.
All right. I will say Deshauna Spencer, who's the founder of Quelly TV. She's doing some amazing things with that streaming platform, and we are excited to continue our work with her, and really excited about the growth. And I know that she is getting a lot more attention now, and rightfully so. So I want to lift her up and everything she's doing. So if anyone's listening out here, be sure to go check out Quelly TV, support, tell your friends, because she's doing some amazing things. There's also Sadia Davis with CCE Global here in Chicago. They have an amazing incubator program that encompasses 9 fields, one of which is TV film. And so she's building a great system over there, doing some amazing things. And I will say my co-chair for I'm the co-chair for the Black Harvest Film Festival, N.K. Gutierrez. She'll be moderating a few panels coming up. And in about 45 minutes, I'll be moderating a panel for Black Harvest Film Festival. So check out the Black Harvest Film Festival as well. It's all love. I think there's an abundance for all of us to build together, for everybody to win. And things like this are so important that we can share our stories and connect with one another.
So Troy, while you're there, can you tell us what's next for you all with Creative Cypher and all of the other programs and platforms you have?
Sure.
All right. And where can we find you? So how can we engage further with you and Creative Cypher and all the work you're doing, and what's next for you all?
Sure. So you can find us at creativecypher.org. You can find us on social media at Creative Cypher. What's next for us? We have our Film Accelerator program, which we piloted last year. We're happy to say that was a successful pilot, and we just opened submissions for the second cycle of that pilot beginning of November. So the finalists will be selected in December. The program will start in February after their pitch event in January. So that's the next big thing for our non-for-profit side. And then our for-profit side, we have an amazing slate of projects coming up that we're excited about. So follow us on social media. You can stay up to date with what we have going on. And if we can be of any service or support to anything that anybody is working on out there, just feel free to reach out and let us know how we can support.
Andrea, do you want to take it from there? And then we'll have Moikgantsi end us out. So
can do. So the best place to find Seattle Black Film Festival is at langstonseattle.org. That's the Black Cultural Arts organization that produces the festival. Also on Instagram at Langston Seattle. The festival itself, we're on Twitter at BLK Film Seattle, at Black Film Seattle. We are excited that our call for work for our 2021 festival is opening in about 6 days. And a week after that, on November 23rd, we are having a panel and screening event where we're going to screen all of our award-winning films from the 2020 festival. And some of those directors will be joining us to tell us about what's new and what's coming up in 2021. So that's mainly, we're going to be heading into what I call Black Flicks. We're going to have all of our call for work films submitted, and I'm going to be watching films nonstop for the next 3 or 4 months. So I'm looking forward to it. A lot of great news stories.
Where is she?
You're there.
So yeah, okay. So yeah, thank you for having us here today, having me here today. This is a wonderful experience. People can find me at Soul Cinema Cafe, and Soul is SOL. There's no U. That's me everywhere, Soul Cinema Cafe. And we have a program coming up with the Apollo Theater on November 19th. It's called Cocktails and Soul Cinema. It's a quarterly series at the Apollo that we're working on taking nationwide. And this particular event is virtual, so you'll be enjoying your cocktails virtually. The program is called Black Life Matters. It's a program of short films by some of the world's, I think, most innovative new filmmakers. We've got Terrence Nance, we've got Tati Pele from South Africa, we've got Marshall Tyler, really Nefertiti Nguvu, really a great slate of films. And we're going to have a conversation afterwards as well. And there'll be a little comedy break with the comedian named Muga, who's a sister out of Brooklyn, who's amazing. So that is free. I encourage people to check out my website, soulcinemacafe.com, to participate in the program, or you can go to the Apollo Theater website. And we're continuing to curate. If you go to our website, you'll see all the stuff that we're curating. We're currently doing a virtual exhibition of Bill Greaves' Nation Time. And so check out the site, soulcinemacafe.com, to see what we're doing. And please join our community, join us online.
Thank you all so very much. This was such an informative conversation. I learned so much. I'm hoping that our audience members learn just as much as well. I can't thank you enough. If I had a way to give you a hug, it would look something like this. Because we're in virtual, it's kind of weird. But yeah, there you go. We can dab the camera real quick.
I like the dab. I like the dab.
Yeah, that's it. But thank you all again. As always, this is the Gary International Black Film Festival. This is our 10th year, y'all. This is our 10th year. We are so thankful and grateful that you all have been with us. We will see you in the next one. So, hey, our opening night starts in 45 minutes. 45 minutes, we have a DJ, we have a comedian, we have some short films. So come back and enjoy some more Gary International Black Film Festival. This was If You Build It, They Will Come. Thank you all again. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.